insight into the progress of these projects. So, having said this, we have a rather rigid schedule. We have 5 minutes presentations each. Then we'll allow short questions, only no comments, please. And then we have a space for debate of about now 35 minutes, assuming that everybody keeps his or her time. Having said this, I introduce our first speaker, which is
they just asked me to film the session, and I wasn't prepared.
From Université de Grenoble, and I will present the 4 pillars and e-education for all. Werner, please.
So thank you very much. Very quick presentation. The idea is to speak about possible projects. We had a meeting a few months ago with many of you, and we tried to say all these nice ideas we have, we must transform them into concrete and precise projects. This is what we try to do. So today there is a list of possible projects. All are in a very draft form. Of course, it's not completed. It's general ideas for some projects. So the project I was proposing has for title the 4 pillars and e-education for all. It's a little bit mysterious. I will try to explain. First of all, I'm in the framework of the Education for All program of UNESCO. Education for all means that every country should provide everyone with access to education and with quality education. But in knowledge societies, education for all takes a new shape, a new form, and we will speak about e-education for all, which means education in a digitalized society, education in a knowledge society, but also education using information and communication technologies as a means to improve education. Why the 4 pillars? Some years ago, a report was submitted to UNESCO by the Commission for Education in the 21st Century. This commission was chaired by Jacques Delors, and this report has for this title, Learning the Treasure Within. And in this report, it is said that education should incorporate 4 main pillars: learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, learning to be. Again, this is a general framework for education. The suggestion is to take this into e-education, into e-education for all, and to mix the exigence of these 4 pillars with e-education for all. So we aim at an e-education for all, taking into account the 4 pillars, using ICTs as an object, because in itself, and content, but also as a mean and a tool. What would be a project about that? It would consist in several concrete actions, creating tools and resources, but also creating strategies, creating e-educational services in the spirit of the 4 pillars and e-education for all, and of course gathering and sharing success stories, good experiences. This project, tools and resources of course, but has for aim to enhance education for all and to take into account the 4 pillars. I said that already. We also must include the component of networking for all. It means that if we speak about education for all, we must do so that everyone can be included in the network society, into networks. So a possible action is to create specific virtual communities taking into account the 4 pillars again, and developing a kind of collective intelligence for e-education for all. So creating such a virtual community, this is the core part of the project. The project would consist in creating this kind of virtual community in the framework of the 4 pillars in the context of e-education for all. So it would consist in designing and experimenting educational tools usable in any country. Of course, a major characteristic of such a project is that it must gather people from very, very different countries. It would produce recommendations for developing e-education for all, but not only in a theoretical way. The idea is to create a virtual community, and in the framework of this virtual community to produce tools, to produce recommendations, and to experiment concrete actions, local actions, face-to-face perhaps, distance action also, and this is essential in the project, an action at the decision makers level, because I'm convinced that our community of scientists, computer scientists, educationists, pedagogists, and so on, must take, it's our role to take what we produce, to take what we design, and to put it at the decision makers level, so that it can be then implemented in policies, in actual policies. The results of such a project should be generalizable and disseminated. A cooperation between different countries should be set up, including developing countries. Precise contribution to the aims of the Dakar Framework for Action. This is some of the principles we want to take into account. And the suggestion was to use La Villa Media as a possible focal point for such a project with many partners, the Swiss Academy of Science and Technology, international bodies, universities, schools, private partners, etc. And this is the project.
Thank you very much.
Comments?
No comments? Questions? Short questions? Very clear presentation of the project. Thank you, Dana. Thanks. Debate is, after all, projects have been presented. Our next presenter is Dr. Anni Corsini Carabuni. She is an astronomer and astrophysicist, but her project here is Real on Earth. E-Solidarity, a meaning of fighting against female genital mutilation. Anni, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to present a project named E-Solidarity Fights Against FGM. I would like just to remind you who is Maasai people. Maasai people is an indigenous people, 300,000 about, across Tanzania and Kenya, especially Kenya. And they are nomadic and semi-pastoral and semi-nomadic. Another terminology is FGM. FGM means female genital mutilations, alias excision, alias female circumcision. So the World Health Organization aims to eradicate completely FGM by Africa and the Arabic countries by 2015. Now, who is the NGO who I'm presenting? MID is a Kenyan NGO based in Narok, a small town, the capital of Masailand, and have headquarters in Boston. The mission is to increase access to education in Kenya, a country where 60% of the population are less than 25 years old, and improve the level of education among Maasai people while maintaining the integrity of their culture. MED has established and is supporting educational center, having a library with more than 20,000 books, and a computer center with 60 computers, about 60 computers, serving 10,000 people and 4 high schools in the region. MIN's goals are bringing closer Maasai culture and Western society, especially based on an exchange program between students, American students and Kenyan, a girl sponsorship program, 300 girls, sponsored by USAID, promoting distance learning education. It's a program that will start in January. Volunteer teacher program, and finally organizing awareness programs at the center, helping in the prevention of spread of HIV and in FGM eradication. Now, in our information society, we can see three main fields of activities: the education, the health, and the social development. Our project contains elements of all those three areas. In education, we use orality, because for indigenous people, orality meaning giving, oral formation is the most important, feasible, and reliable mean by tradition. In health area, our campaign against FGM is preventing women and girls' children health against infection, HIV, and diseases, chronic diseases. In the social area, social development area, this is achieved by the women groups producing traditional handicraft, and in that way we create for them a small income, so we contribute to the poverty eradication. Here we can see the daily living conditions of Maasai women. Every single day the Maasai women fetch water from the closest river. They have only surface water, no wells, no installation, water installation. So it's a very harsh life for them. And besides that, we have some cultural practices like FGM and early forced marriages that increase the women's suffering. This illustrates also the daily struggle of women. They carry 20 liters jerry cans balanced on their heads, attached only by a leather strap across the forehands. Yeah. So phase one of our project is giving local information workshops orally. Of course, orally. We give orally information sessions. Then our partners are health specialists and social workers. For the moment, are only volunteers, as the phase one is ongoing. At this stage, we need financial resources, meaning fundraising, to cover the first educational step. We use the WHO methodology, the World Health Organization methodology and documentation, adapted to Maasai context, meaning we use the health approach, the human rights approach, the cultural and religious approach, and finally the development and gender approach. In our information sessions. Here are women listening attentively, me and my assistant, who is a Maasai woman and social worker. It's one of our first sessions in Enaramatisariki village. Here is my assistant, Lilian, showing to women material against FGM. It's a new paper coming from Burkina Faso, done by women, which demonstrates why a circumcised woman suffers more giving birth than a normal one, and they are very sensitive to these arguments. Me surrounded by women, participating in our first workshop, Asylum. Now that brings us to phase two. The rural women gather and form small groups against FGM. Then those groups produce traditional Maasai handicraft, meaning beadwork, bracelets essentially. MID is preparing the ICT infrastructure to promote this production, done by women. Now you have an illustration of what they are, the Maasai bracelets, beadworks. Here is an allegory. They are necklaces, Maasai typical necklaces, but the symbol of the metaphor is, the first is knowledge, so we give information, then that brings to obtain awareness, which thanks to e-solidarity and ICT brings to progress, so we lead the women group to progress. Through internet, we can inform the developed countries about our project. With the web, through the web, we can send emails encouraging women to give up FGM, and by means of hosting websites, people can buy Maasai handicraft. So it's another allegory. As ICT aims to connect people by sharing knowledge, it should not divide but unify. not like these bracelets isolated. And let people be like these Maasai bracelets, colorful, in their cultural and ethnic differences, but linked by their economic and social exchanges. Because we are trying to promote progress as a package, not only at a strictly economic level, but as a whole concept, aiming to better living conditions for everyone. This is a typical, Maasai necklace for brides, and our project is a marriage between keeping the good traditions and the indigenous culture and social development, a healthy life for women. Another typical example, necklaces, traditional necklaces for Maasai women. Our slogan is, demonstrate your solidarity with Maasai women by sending to them an email supporting giving up FGM and or buying a handicraft bracelet. I prefer and. Finally, information has no frontiers. Knowledge should be shared beyond language barriers and cultural discrepancies. The oral transmission is the first communication tool. ICT is its latest descendant, aiming to strengthen and accelerate communication among people and promote social development. And I would like to conclude using the words of a woman in our first workshop. She said, "Why did you take so long to come here and speak to us? Where were you before you educated people, and why you didn't explain to us all those things? We're just doing what our mothers and grandmothers have always done." Thank you.
Yes, I need just a question, please. Yes, it's very interesting project, very useful project. Could you tell us just a little bit about the level of equipment in information technology in Maasai land?
Thailand.
Just a few.
So they are very remote areas, far from every road, for 4 hours. Far from any traced road. They have no electricity, no water, nothing, in fact, nothing. But in Narok, the small capital, Maasai land capital, the cultural center, mid-cultural center, has a computer room with 60 computers and audiovisual educational material. So we are trying to bring, information to the rural, remote areas, because it's very difficult for those women to attend seminars in the town.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience? Yes, please. I think you're also the next speaker, Sam. So nice to hear.
Yes, well, the Maasai don't have electricity, but they have a lot of sun. And it's a pity because there are 2 Maasai here at the summit. It would have been nice if they'd been here. But my question is, what is your position on the Maasai polygamy?
It's another traditional practice, but we don't attack it for the moment. No, only FGM really violates the human rights, and it's very bad for women's health. And it spreads HIV.
Okay, thank you very much. No more questions. Then we just. You have a question? Vraiment?
For technical reasons, I need a question. I will put the next question. Can you?
Yeah, Annie's over there.
Annie, can you speak just 1 minute about the tree plantation?
Okay, come on. The micro is still working.
We have another project called One Tree, One Pupil. And it aims to join classes from Geneva schools, primary or secondary or high schools, with schools in Maasai land. The pupils in both countries, pupils are sensitized to the ecology, the forest importance, keeping the trees, okay, taking care of the trees. And then the Geneva pupils, they gather money, they send to Kenya, and there we buy small seedlings, plants, from a plant nursery, in Kakamega Forest, which is the latest, the last foreign rainforest in Kenya. We buy small seedlings and we plant them by Maasai peoples in Maasai land, which is a very arid area because of the extensive, how you can say that? Cattle, yes. Yeah. So the project is already ongoing. We have planted almost 1,000 seedlings, and in this project they participate 3 schools for the moment, 3 schools in Kenya, in Maasai land, and 3 schools in Geneva. We hope to further this collaboration. And the pupils are very, very interested to communicate between them in English or in French, some cases in French, but emails, and exchange emails.
Okay, thank you very much, Annie, for this also personally impressive presentation. And now this next, no more question, no. Then our next speaker, I must apologize because I did not get your name. I only know that it was Kenneth Deere who wrote the paper, but you represented him yesterday, presented this paper, so would you please tell your name because I don't have it.
My name is Ann-Kristin Håkansson, and I'm a Sami.
Apologies, Ann-Kristin.
So, we just concluded yesterday the Global Forum for Indigenous Peoples, and there was, I don't know if you've heard about that, this has been going on now for a few days, and that's where the Maasai attended. I'm going to present this roadmap to Tunis. So the indigenous participation in the information society, again I want to stress that it is very important that we don't risk losing our cultures and identities. So we must take part in the information society on our own terms. Now, and also based on the cultural backgrounds. And this means that indigenous research projects are important. But listening to the presentations yesterday, I think it would be very unwise not to ask you for help. We want to promote the cultural diversity. So the ICT applications we want to identify culturally appropriate capacity building. Now we must also remember that in some indigenous area we start really from zero, so with people that have never seen a computer. So we want to elaborate those strategies. And the most important strategy is how do we reduce poverty? Because normally usually in every country the indigenous population is the one at the bottom. So we want to develop models for workshops, and we want to have information workshops also, and to have to elaborate action plans and to bridge the digital divide, which will take a long time. So this, I hope, will lead us then to Tunis in 2005, where we would like to have a parallel event, perhaps not the one that was taking place now, but perhaps in a different way. We would like to bring together indigenous peoples and the scientific community and private sector and donors and so on. And again, there we would have perhaps even better platform to have an action plan for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Yeah, is it? did you start to work with some indigenous communities, in particularly for this project?
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
more questions? Thank you for the presentation. And our next speaker is Antoine Geisbühler from Geneva, and he will speak about E-well.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 5 minutes presentation of the 20 minutes presentation that's going to take place later this morning. The name of the project is the E-well, and the idea is to understand and engineer several aspects leading to what we call ICT-enabled, integrated, multi-sectorial development of rural areas. I'll try to be a bit more clear than the title of my presentation. The first thing that we believe is that access to information is a primary need. This picture was taken in the suburbs of Nouakchott in Mauritania, where we have some telemedicine projects. And what struck me is that in this poor area where the main challenge is getting some water, and this is solved by having donkeys pull carts on which there are cans containing water. Well, if you look at what people decide to put on top of their so-called houses, well, you see antennas, satellite dishes, and this is for me a sign that the ability to communicate, the ability to learn, the ability to exchange is something that's fundamentally important to, well, one of the reasons why we exist in terms of being more than just able to drink and eat. So that's the first concept that we'll try to develop some more later on. I've been involved for about 3 years in building telemedicine applications, first from the north to the south, from Geneva to Bamako and then to other big cities in Western Africa. And we've been relatively successful at doing this, and those are images, snapshots of what we do. We can examine patients remotely, exchange images, radiological images to have second advice, and other things. This network is something that already exists. It's being extended, and we move towards what we call now a South-South telemedicine network, where we are linking teaching facilities in medicine in various countries in northern and western Africa. And the idea is to foster the exchange of education and teleconsultation in medicine in a South-South network where gradually the North-South aspect disappears. And the green dots are the ones that are active, the yellow ones are the ones that are coming up within the next few months, the big blue ones are the ones that are funded for 2004, and the small blue ones are not funded yet. But basically this is one of the activities on which we are going to build our E-well. One of the challenges when you build those activities is to remember that as soon as you introduce technology, you also introduce inequities. And one of them is the danger of increasing the digital divide within the countries where you bring those technologies. And we've seen that very clearly as we started building those telemedicine networks. One of the key problems in medicine in those developing countries is the fact that most specialists are staying and want to stay in the capitals. Therefore, the expertise never reaches where it's most needed in the rural areas. And we believe that having access to colleagues via ICT in those areas makes lots of sense. And that's what we've done in this place. This is a small village in Dogon country in Mali. And we were able to recruit a physician who would accept to work in those conditions, provided he could stay in touch with his colleagues. And we've done that using a mini VSAT internet link. So what's also clear from those efforts that are now going on is the fact that it's probably not reasonable to bring a telecenter like the one we've brought in those cities in this village that you can see on the slide, just for telemedicine. And it's also clear that there are lots of other sectors that need to grow and prosper so that we can fight in a sustainable way against poverty. And what we've seen with our very brief experience of bringing internet in this village is that there are lots of other activities, including continuous education of teachers, including stimulation of commerce using advertising and contacts with others via the internet, including valorization of the cultural heritage. There are lots of things that can be improved by or enabled by ICT, but the main concept is that if you want to be able to fight poverty and get to a sustainable level of development, you have to launch activities that are going to be in multiple sectors. So the idea is not just to bring a telecenter, but it's also to work with people to plant traditional medicinal herbs, to reforest the area, to start a school for adult alphabetization, to improve the adoption of clean water, and so on. And the idea is that the access to the internet is going to be one of the components of this project, and that's what we call the e-well. So you just don't need water to live, but having access to this e-well should help stabilizing development. Is it already over? Okay, so that's my last slide anyway. What we want to do with this e-well project, that I'll have more time to present later on, is to develop a sustainable economical model to reach long-term sustainable development. And what we plan to do is build on the project we've already started in Mali and try to reproduce it in other places in the area, not necessarily in Mali, but in other areas that have somewhat different cultural determinants, and be able to learn from those similar projects in different contexts, and be able to learn what really makes a difference in terms of sustainability, and therefore create a South-South learning network focusing on knowledge about technical, social, economical engineering of rural development projects. We plan to do that over the next 7 years, including 6 different sites, including Dimbal. And to do that, what we've done is we've created a structure within UNITAR called Agencies for Agreement on Experimentation of Information and Communication Technologies for Social Initiatives, which is going to be sort of our broker within this, the United Nations agencies to collect the funds and to create the South-South Learning Network. Thank you.
Yes, as far as engineers and the World Federation of Engineering Organizations are concerned, I must say that we are very much interested by your project, and we will follow what you are doing, and perhaps we can join our forces.
That would be great.
Yes. I forgot to mention that Antoine is a professor of medical informatics at the University of Geneva, and this is a very renowned professorship which he holds, and I'm absolutely sure that this will be a marvelous project with good quality.
Thank you for the kind words.
So, yeah, question? One question, please. Hi, Christy.
I would like to ask how you prepare yourself before you go out as a Westerner into a totally different cultural environment, and how do you deal with intercultural clashes?
Well, that's a long discussion. Clearly, this is not my work. This is the work of a large team. For the Dimbal project, we're working with the local authorities. Actually, we've invited the mayor of the commune and one of his coordinators of our project to come here, and they've talked about how they see and they understand the potential benefits of those technologies in other workshops during the summit. We're also working with archaeologists who have been, for about 20 years now, involved in research in this area, who have an extensive understanding and knowledge and are integrated in the life of this village. So we've sort of been drawn, not because we were bringing technology, but because we were bringing some help to set up the hospital there first. And we're really driven by the needs that are expressed by the local authorities. So for us, it's something that's extremely important, not just to sort of bring high tech or, ICTs are tools that we think can make a difference. We've not shown it yet, but we are pretty convinced that that's where we need to go. Those projects have a lot of potential to make mistakes in terms of how you deal with the local culture. I've only been there about 5 times, and I don't know much about the local culture, about the language, about the traditions, but we rely a lot on the local people we're working with to help us do things in a way that makes sense, that's relevant in terms of traditions, of culture, and respecting the local community. But I think that's one of the key challenges, and that's why I think we want to launch different projects in different places, so that first we realize what is different, but hopefully we'll understand what's similar and what can be reused and what can be engineered in terms of making those projects that usually tend to die a few months or years after the people who brought the money leave. How do we make them sustainable in the long term? And I think that's really needs to integrate all the cultural context and all the traditions and the local knowledge and know-how.
Thank you very much. Before coming to the next presentation, may I mention we are half through the process of presentation, but there's a parallel process going on. Our cartoonist is heavy at work. Please look intelligently, concerned, interested. I think this will influence him significantly in his production. Thank you so much. So our next speaker is Colin Harrison. Colin is a physicist and electrical engineer. He has worked here at CERN to implement an accelerator, but this is not what he's speaking about. He speaks about, let me rephrase it in more simple words, on e-exchange or rather than cyber, e-truck or e-barter. Colin, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I do not have a presentation. You can see the abstract on page 52 in the abstracts book. But this is a very simple idea. I think you'll get it very easily. It came from a discussion at a meeting organized by Raymond in June, where a group of us were looking for methods to involve more and more of a community in electronic means of finding information. We're concerned that one of the causes of the digital divide is that certain groups of people are simply not motivated to take part in this activity. They have found no value in it, and so we were seeking for ways to find new kinds of value. We're also concerned about possibility of using these technologies for developing social capital. And so the idea emerged of a community-based system that would enable barter or trading, or in French, cybertruc, to be supported to meet some of the needs of a community, potentially people who had otherwise no interest in using those kinds of systems. Obviously trading, bartering is a very familiar concept, very ancient. What we propose to do here is simply provide a better means of exchanging the information which is the basis for that kind of trading. And the concrete example that we have looked at is how to arrange journeys for people who have no means of transportation by sharing transportation with people who have cars or other means of driving. So conceptually a very simple system. Someone who needs to make a journey says that at a certain time I need to travel from a certain point to another point. People who have regular journeys can register these. People who are willing to make certain kinds of trips or make occasional trips can respond. And we would then perform a kind of fuzzy matching between these requests and the capabilities of the transportation, the people with transportation. It's actually underneath quite an interesting computer science problem, because there is a need for some understanding now of what a journey means and what intermediate points along that journey might mean. For example, if you were traveling in this area here from Annemasse to Grand Saconnet, the system needs to understand it would be quite easy to take someone who needed to go to Paki, for example. So technologies for this are emerging. In fact, there are early trading sites. There are a couple of references in the abstract, one that was created earlier this year in Paris. And there are more general trading systems that exist as well. It seems like an idea that is applicable for both developed communities. We saw immediate relevance to the Geneva area with its transportation congestion problems, as well as underdeveloped or developing areas. So it's a simple concept that we think is implementable at relatively low cost. Does not necessarily require the end users to have personal computers of their own to access it. One could imagine means of doing this through a telephone system, either using voice or DTMF or even SMS. So it could be accessible in a number of different ways at relatively low cost. And yet I think is a good example of how information technology, through bringing or conveying information between various parties, can solve a real social need.
Thank you so much.
Yes, one question. This is very interesting idea, the Cybertruck. In some ways, it's something that many people now are using. For instance, when we see the huge development of the peer-to-peer exchange of musical files, yes. It's a very interesting thing.
Yes, indeed.
But honestly, this is not an example of legal exchange.
Yes, we hope to conduct more legal transactions.
Yes, it should be legal. Christine, please.
Sorry, not a question. I would just like to say that this is very well implemented in the Sami communities already, because we all live in very remote areas with no transportation, so you're welcome to have some of our experiences.
Yes. Okay, more questions? Thanks, Colin, for the interesting presentation. Our next speaker is Jean-Marie Leclerc. He is Director of Information Technologies at l'État de Genève, native from here. And he will speak about cyber inclusion through activity.
Good morning. Hier, je vous ai présenté, dans le cadre du référentiel e-repository, je vous ai présenté une approche qui prenait en compte la notion de l'information comme nouvelle ressource. En attendant que ma présentation soit prête, j'aimerais vous donner deux éléments importants. Le premier, au niveau de la cyberinclusion, nous avons admis que nous devions être capables d'aider, dans le cadre des nouvelles technologies, des personnes qui sont en difficulté ou qui ont des problèmes différents. Premier élément concret, je vous l'ai dit hier, nous avons engagé au sein de notre structure une aveugle de naissance qui permet de pouvoir gérer la totalité des sites internet pour qu'ils puissent être accessibles par les aveugles. Aujourd'hui, c'est quelque chose qui est opérationnel. Mais en attendant aussi un deuxième exemple, et j'aimerais le dire parce que souvent on parle des coûts, on dit que seuls ceux qui ont beaucoup d'argent sont capables de pouvoir mettre en place cette gestion d'information. J'ai un ami qui a une fille qui est autiste depuis la naissance. Lorsqu'il est allé en retraite, pour un ordinateur dont le coût était un coût d'occasion pour 50 francs suisses, plus une imprimante couleur à 250 francs suisses, 300 francs suisses, cet ami s'est mis à l'ordinateur à la retraite et a commencé à utiliser cet ordinateur pour pouvoir apprendre à utiliser des éléments de peinture. Pour la première fois avec sa fille, il a réussi à pouvoir communiquer au travers de la peinture. Mais ce n'est pas terminé. Avec des heures et des heures et des heures d'entraînement, uniquement pour une approche qui lui permettait de communiquer, il a commencé à travailler avec l'outil Word, tout simplement. Eh bien, imaginez-vous qu'à 43 ans, la fille qui n'avait jamais communiqué avec ses parents, au travers d'un ordinateur dont le coût, je le rappelle, 50 francs d'occasion, en prenant uniquement des logiciels bas de gamme, une imprimante à 250 francs. La fille, au travers de l'ordinateur, a expliqué ce qu'elle ressentait depuis sa naissance, a expliqué ce qu'elle pouvait imaginer et discuter, et enfin, la personne la femme de cet ami qui est suisse-allemande, les parents se sont rendus compte qu'au travers des années où cette fille allait de spécialiste allemand en français, que la fille avait intégré totalement l'allemand. Elle s'exprimait dans un allemand parfait. Et j'aimerais vous dire que l'année dernière, au mois d'octobre, 4 autistes à Zurich devant 400 personnes ont dialogué avec la foule. Je rappelle le coût de l'investissement, un ordinateur de 50 francs d'occasion, une imprimante de 250 francs. Je réservais cette expérience pour vous démontrer que de prendre les nouvelles technologies par la gestion de l'information, la connaissance, l'analyse, l'expérience, permet de démontrer qu'il n'est pas nécessaire de disposer de millions de dollars pour réussir à transformer dans notre société l'information comme nouvelle ressource. Maintenant que c'est prêt, je vous présente le projet que nous allons défendre. Genève dispose d'un observatoire technologique. Le projet que je vais vous présenter maintenant repose totalement sur cet observatoire. Vous avez vu hier que nous avons défini une stratégie de e-society et nous avons démontré aussi qu'il était possible, au travers de toute une réflexion, de pouvoir prendre en compte des besoins qui partent depuis la vision stratégique jusqu'au projet concret. Le projet, c'est d'utiliser cette infrastructure en accord avec la CNUSET. Donc ce que je vous dis maintenant a déjà été validé avec la CNUSET, c'est-à-dire la Commission des Nations Unies pour les sciences et les techniques. Nous avons pris la possibilité de définir un pays en voie de développement. Le choix sera fait par la CNUSET. Ce pays en voie de développement aura un choix sur un ensemble de thèmes. Il choisira ou bien l'éducation, ou bien la santé, ou bien l'administration. En fonction de ce thème, il y aura une définition d'une personne qui vont pouvoir travailler avec nous. Et la décision que nous prenons en proposant ce projet, c'est de faire un transfert de technologie. 2 personnes viendront à Genève dans le cadre de l'Observatoire technologique, à partir de la stratégie de leur pays, à partir aussi du projet qui ont été redéfinis. Il y aura d'une part un transfert de compétences, d'autre part le choix d'une approche pragmatique permettant aux pays de pouvoir prendre en compte leur stratégie et avec nos équipes de réaliser un projet concret. Pour éviter que ce projet ne reste qu'au stade de la résolution, les conditions suivantes seront prises en compte. La coordination se fera bien entendu avec la CNUSET et l'État de Genève via l'Observatoire. Il y aura une validation de ce projet inscrit au niveau du Millénium avec le secrétaire général de l'ONU. Il y aura un suivi permanent au travers de ce projet. Une désignation d'un correspondant tant sur le plan à Genève que sur le plan du pays. De façon à ce qu'au bout d'un délivrable que nous avons fixé entre 6 mois et 1 année, nous puissions démontrer qu'au travers de cette vision et notre repository, qu'il est possible d'une part de prendre en compte des projets dans un environnement hyper difficile et d'autre part d'arriver à un résultat concret. Le résultat de ce projet sera cette démonstration et en même temps un transfert de technologie, un transfert de connaissances et une mise en place d'une collaboration. Si le projet est ce que nous espérons que devienne une réalité, ce sera une démonstration comment nous pouvons à l'avenir travailler dans un échange concret et arriver à des solutions très pragmatiques. Merci.
Merci Jean-Marie. Question? Very interesting project also related to the United Nations system. So good chance to realize and make progress.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Je dois repartir puisque j'ai annoncé dans la salle M. Poletto qui est de l'Observatoire technologique. Se fera un plaisir de répondre à vos questions, de vous expliquer aussi le suivi. Il est derrière. Je dois malheureusement me rendre à une séance pour défendre un budget de l'État de Genève au niveau des députés. Merci.
Merci. Okay. At this time, may I welcome several new participants which we had not seen before. Welcome There will be abstracts of the suggestions. I think several will be available. Moreover, I wish to mention that all these sessions will be published in a booklet which is edited by Tom van Werk. This is a guy who is just speaking with Jean-Marie. He will speak later on education and the Knowledge Society Information Technology Supporting Human Development. Will be published under IFIP auspices by Kluwer Academic Publishers. Will be available, I think, seeing the progress in this early next year, March, April or so. So thank you. Now our next speaker is Darren. Darren Watson is a professor of information technology and education at King's College, London University. Darren, please.
Hello, thank you. I am not comfortable sitting because I'm just not comfortable sitting when I'm talking to people. I'm also not comfortable when you do not know whether to look at me or the screen, so hard luck, you have to look at me just for 5 minutes.
Very near to the micro.
Very near to the micro. Okay, even nearer? Are we okay now? Right, you have to look at me very near to the micro. I'm coming from a different perspective, and I want to persuade you that this perspective is an important perspective that we must take a responsibility for. My perspective is from the social science and humanities. We are talking about a new information society. We already have this information, this e-world here, and it is causing substantial problems or dilemmas. I have referred to this in my paper, which is on page 57, so I do not wish to go through that in detail now. I want to try and persuade you why it is so important that we recognize these dilemmas, this baggage, which Colin is worried about that I have used. This is baggage that we bring. The technology has already brought us and is already causing us dilemmas, or dilemmata, as our chairman would prefer me to say. Now, we must accept the responsibility that the new e-society, e-information has brought with us. This is an alternative form, a new concept of digital divides. These divides are not necessarily between the haves and the have-nots. They're between different parts of the community and different perceptions about how they may or may not be empowered by the technology, how they may or may not have their creativity suppressed or encouraged. It is also important that we understand, and we have already heard good examples, where there is a clash between individual rights and the rights of society, its norms, its values, and its sense of ethics. It is also important to appreciate that different societies have different norms and values. We may not assume in a Western-style democracy, if we may call it that those norms and values should pertain across the world. We have already seen how individual rights have created illegality, from early hackers, which has resulted now in free spams, from exchange of music, which is illegal and against intellectual rights. We must accept and recognize we have to find solutions. The only way to find solutions is to make sure that the technology does not just threaten the individual and society rights, but it also protects it. And we must not talk in education of automatic free information if that information actually threatens individuals and social groups and is against the norms and laws of that society. Technology must work within. So what must we do as educationists? We must ensure that all citizens have a sense of digital literacy which enables them to feel confident that their voice, their understanding, actually has a right to cross against the very powerful forces which at the moment control our sense of what is the norm and what is legal. In order to do this, I want a project. I want a project which would collect the way different societies and different groups, from small groups of individuals to large companies, how do they address these social dilemmas? Because they're concerned. We must actually share these concerns and engage in discussion and come to compromises and solutions, different ones to suit different communities. The second reason we must be involved is that we must ensure that our communities, not just school communities, but our wider communities, the important communities of lifelong learning, actually have a sense of power and ownership with respect to the e-society, that they do not feel there's something else more powerful, whether it is a large technological industry or what is actually empowered over them. They should feel equal partners as members of society to be able to discuss the rights and wrongs of certain factors, the issues which these come, and they must be in a position to have a strong, powerful political voice, so that the way we move forward does not represent the free-for-all which we have lived with so far for the last 20, 30 years. And finally, the reason why this educational community must be involved in a project like this. The reason we must be involved is because we must be responsible citizens, and we understand the power and advantages of the technology, and we also understand the issues. Therefore, we must be sure that our voice is heard not just in governments and policymakers, but also with the large companies and the smaller companies who are engaged in the complex reality of devising and designing technological solutions and how those solutions fit within society's norms. Many medical environments already do this, where there are ethical issues and non-executive directors and lay individuals sit on a number of panels for research activities and other activities in the medical and bioethical community. We must have an ethical community within the education environment. We must make sure that informed voices who understand all the areas sit on non-executive positions, encourage the setting up of ethical committees as part of all the technological environments, so that the issue of whether society is driven by technology or technology drives society is no longer a problem, because we will be in partnership to actually explore the dilemmas, the social, the ethical, the moral dilemmas which some forms of technology are posing now for us in society. Thank you.
Yeah, Darine? Yes. Just a few minutes. Could you precise, because I didn't understand very well, is it more a research project, an educational experiment, a way to find a decision-making project model in a context, a difficult context?
It is a research and action project. It is important that we find communities who actually face these dilemmas. There are very real dilemmas now that schools, communities face, and how they tackle them. And they tackle them within their own cultural and societal norms. We need to go there and find out how they are doing this. If we go to a range of different ones, then we are able to produce a paradigm for dilemmas which can be used as a basis for educational and societal material. At the moment, the social and humanities world is behind in producing material to help and support educationalists in this very important area.
Thank you very much. More questions? Thank you, Darren. And now, last but not least, Tom van Bert on Network Blended Education of Tomorrow. Tom is a professor at the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands. Tom, please.
This project idea was developed together with David Wood during one of the sessions we had organized by the Swiss Academy of Technical Sciences. It starts with the observation that in rich, developed countries there are a lot of tensions that affect the educational system. And basically, the pertinence of institutional learning is at stake. It's challenged. We think that to meet this challenge, there should be a redefinition of education goals. And specifically, we think that the idea of developing competence is a powerful idea that can be put into effect. In the Netherlands, for instance, this idea is gaining much support now. What is important is to have a view on the evaluation system. Because one of the problems we see is that we start teaching our pupils in a different way, but the examinations stay the same. And this gives, of course, problems. So it's of special importance to do something about the evaluation. Here are the project aims, and I think it's interesting that we think that if you put competence development in the center of what you do in education, that you can make education cheaper, and that this is a model that can also be used to a profit in developing countries. For example, you could have pupils going out to industry and do projects there. Industry perhaps has a computer, so you can do a project that is good for the industry, is good for the competence development, and is good for education. We think there are some mechanisms there that might help developing countries to develop their education in a better way. And we think that there's something behind this, and that's knowledge development, and that we should go about knowledge development in a more ecological way. And the idea of co-learning is, we think, a powerful idea that we also want to try out in the international context, in international communities. The key principles are that many actors should participate. So you just not only do it with the teacher, you do it with the management, you do it with the local authority. It's an integral approach. Practical, real world, nothing in a laboratory, but go out and do it with real pupils in a real situation. Then we want to have prototypes of e-education, and we hope that we can see what the patterns are that make success possible. And what's especially important is to involve the local community in a balanced representation, which means you not only talk to the older people, you talk to the youngsters too, because they are the ones who need to learn something. These are the benefits we expect. We hope to have a new role model for the teacher, a model for how to organize this type of education, and a new basis for the application of ICT in education. And basically, our idea is that network blended education is all about interaction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Questions? Thank you very much. Now, Pantare.